Hello and welcome to Philosophy 192, Business Ethics. I'm your instructor, Nate Greeley. This is an online asynchronous course, so we won't be seeing each other in person. Although if you happen to be on the Challen campus, I will be around if you'd like to meet me in person. Um, but for the most part, you'll be seeing me in this bubble in the lectures, and then I'll have office hours on Zoom as well. Uh, so this lecture is just to, set you up for the course. It's the equivalent of what we would do on the first day in a traditional course where we go through the syllabus, get a general idea of what the course is going to cover, what the assignments will be, and what the schedule is going to look like. And then you can dig into the course content soon after this. So again, shouldn't be too long today. So let me introduce myself. So my name is Nate Greeley. Uh, I got my PhD at UC San Diego in philosophy and cognitive science. You don't need to call me doctor or professor. Nate is fine. Um, there's my email there. Uh, Office hours are on Zoom. So if you go into Canvas to the syllabus, there should be a link there that you can click to enter the Zoom office hours. So those will be Monday, Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. But if you happen to have class at that time or for some reason can't make those hours, just shoot me an email and I can usually we can find a time that we can both meet on Zoom. Uh, or, some students prefer to just communicate by email or Canvas messaging, and that's sufficient for them. So I try to, respond to any emails within 24 hours, sometimes much more quickly than that. So I've been teaching at Mount St. Mary's since 2023. So, about business ethics, critical thinking, logic. So I always enjoy teaching here. I think the students are great, and so I expect that everything will go well. I'm looking forward to it. So that's me. Let's get into what the course will be about. So if you ever taken an ethics course, which maybe some of you haven't, ethics is the study of the nature of right and wrong. Sometimes we call it meta ethics because it's not when you take a ethics course, usually it's not so much specifically about uh, concrete questions of like, is abortion right or wrong? Is capital punishment right and wrong? Often it'll be a higher level course about, well, what makes things right or wrong? Is it the fact that it causes pleasure or pain? Is it something else? Um, this course is not a meta ethics course. This is an applied ethics course, which means we will be addressing specific questions of, is this sort of thing right or wrong, with a focus on business practices. So, all of you will, unless you're independently wealthy, will have jobs, and some of you will, run businesses. And if you are, responsible people, you're going to hopefully ask yourself from time to time, what's the right way to run this business, right? What is a way that is, helpful, respectful, again, whatever makes things right or wrong. So we will dig into some of these meta-ethical questions because you kind of need some of that background and some of that framework in order to understand some of the discussions that we're talking about. So I'll give you enough to understand it, but the core of the class will be about specific questions within the world of business and commerce. So yeah, we'll start with a little review of like all the most popular ethical theories, so you get a sense of like how these authors that we'll read later are thinking. Are they thinking from a utilitarian standpoint? That is, are they thinking about, maximizing pleasure for everybody, minimizing pain? Are they thinking from what's known as a deontological standpoint, which is sort of strict rule-based, that says, no, people have certain rights that can never be violated, and so on. I'll also survey some theories of what's called distributive justice, because business is, people are in business to make money, and the question of how should money be distributed in a society is a question of distributive justice. And so often a lot of the authors will reference some of the bigger names in theories of distributive justice. So in sort of the second unit of the class, I'll give you a background in distributive justice, and then we're going to get into various questions on, the nature of morality as it affects business. First of all, the first question is a business even the sort of thing that could do wrong, right? If I run a company, does it even make sense to say my company has done something wrong and my company should be punished, right? Or is it only people, individual people, that can do right and wrong and that ought to be punished? What is in the realm of business, what is the sort of thing that we're even praising or blaming, right? Um, we'll cover who businesses are morally responsible to, right? So, who are they accountable to when they say a business is doing something good or something bad? To whom, right? Who is the beneficiary, or who are businesses sort of aimed at benefiting? We'll talk about what sort of things are moral to sell or not to sell. We'll discuss bodily organs, right? Some people need kidneys, and some people have kidneys and might be willing to sell a kidney, for a price. Um, Currently in the United States, that sort of thing is illegal. We'll explore the question of whether or not that should be legal. Another important sort of bodily activity that is currently illegal is sex work, right? And we'll discuss the question of whether it's moral or immoral to sell sexual services. Um, we're going to cover uh, also sort of hiring practices, issues of affirmative action, CEO pay, various subjects right within the realm of business ethics. So I think you get the idea of the sort of things we'll be focusing on. So, every syllabus we're required to put learning outcomes. Uh, so the language I put here is you should be able to demonstrate your understanding of ethical issues in business by engaging in discussions, completing written exams, and writing and revising an original essay that argues for a specific thesis. So that is true. More generally, um, the way I view the learning outcomes in a college course, I was once an undergrad, and I understand that you can't just pack, content and memorization into someone's brain and expect them to carry that with them for much longer than the semester ends. Um, I find that there's a handful of things that I explored much more deeply in undergrad that I carry with me now and that influence my life. So in my courses, I like to give people the flexibility to choose one aspect of the course that they find very interesting and do a deep dive and write an original research paper on that particular topic. So my learning outcome for you is to find one thing in the realm of business ethics that fascinates you, that you want to say something original and do some original philosophical work on. Um, there's no single textbook, so all the course texts will be free on Canvas. Um, if you've used Canvas before, then great. If you haven't, find the modules. If you just log into the course, it'll be the first thing that shows up is the modules. If you start at the beginning and click next, 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 you can basically work your way through the whole course in sequence. So it should be fairly straightforward. As a new unit approaches, first there'll be something to read, then there'll be a lecture on that reading. I'll have the lecture slides posted next, and then whatever assignments will be in the modules in sequence. So it's pretty straightforward, linear way to work through the class. If you want a broader overview of what's expected, go to the syllabus page, and that'll give you the whole schedule. So the assessments, I approach a course, I want to encourage people to do the reading, right? Watch the lectures, and in an online course, uh, discourage you from just sort of going to the internet and copying and pasting or using an AI. It's first of all a violation of academic integrity, but second of all, you don't learn anything. And I want to help you actually become an ethical person, become a good person, right? That's part of the job of a university is to try to make you a decent human being. And here in this ethics class, you get to focus on that for a minute. So, enjoy it. So, um, again, I encourage you to engage with the course material by giving you some pretty easy points just for doing that. So there will be weekly discussion posts where you will engage with the material. I'll describe it more on the next screen, but it's not just a book report. I don't want you to just say, here's what the author said to prove that you read it. I'm going to be asking for a little deeper analysis than that. And that's going to hopefully lead you to come up with an idea for your term paper. There will also be some multiple choice type quizzes that just to check in, right? Again, I said, I don't think the point of a college course is to pack a bunch of content in your brain so you can memorize it, but I do need to check in to make sure that you're actually attempting the reading and paying attention to the lecture. So those quizzes are for that. They're designed to be super, super easy if you have any familiarity with the course material, right? If you're unfamiliar with the course material because you haven't attempted the reading or watched the lectures, you will flunk the quizzes. Google's not really going to help you out with this stuff. Okay. Then the bulk of the assessments have to do with the essay you're going to write. So there's going to be, it's a three-stage sort of thing. I think a lot of college courses teach people to write bad papers quickly. And so we're going to try to write a better paper more slowly. And at the end of it, hopefully it's something you can be proud of. And I'll give you places you can submit it to, undergrad conferences, undergrad journals. They're not too hard to get into. And if you get accepted, now you have a line item on your resume, right? I published in this undergraduate journal. I presented at this conference. If you get into a conference, it's another state. There's often funding to fly you out there. I can help you with that. So yeah, I want you to write something that you're proud of, and that means working slowly and revising, because until you're revising, you're not even really writing, right? If you're just brainstorming, vomiting on the page, that's part of the process, but it has to go further than that. And often in many classes, you don't get to go any further than that. So here's the breakdown in a little more detail. So attendance and participation, 15%. So in an online course, that means posting to the discussion board. What I'd like to see on the discussion board, again, I don't need a summary of the reading or a summary of the lecture. What I want to see is engagement, critical engagement with the material. So if you have an objection, if you think one of the authors is wrong, right? Or even you think they're right, but they said one particular thing that you think is questionable, that's fine. Yeah, push back, right? If you think their argument could be extended in some way. The idea is, for this term paper, you're going to be philosophers, which means you're going to have an original idea, right? That's scary to some people. How can I be original? Again, I'm going to help you through that. But the first part to start being original is in the discussion. It's very low stakes, right? But just, yeah, right. If you're reading, also questions for clarification, right? If you're doing the reading, you're saying this paragraph made no sense to me. Explain why, right? Say, does the author mean this or this? I'm a little confused. And then post that into the discussion. And that means to me that you are thinking critically as well. And often the confusion is not your fault, right? Maybe often the author is being ambiguous, or there's a problem that you've sort of subconsciously latched onto that could develop into a paper topic as well. So that's the idea of the discussion, original thought. The quizzes, there'll be multiple choice on Canvas. Again, basically just what is the main point of this reading or this lecture. If you've done the reading, watched the lecture, they should be no problem. But if you're thinking you can get through the class without doing that, the quizzes are going to trip you up. Right? There will be a midterm, so about halfway through the class. So the midterm is a short essay form. I will give you 4 options to choose from, and they'll be based on the material from the class. The midterms don't require original thought. It's distinct from the term paper. Here, I do just want you to explain the content, the reading, but you don't have to explain everything from the course. You can pick 2 essays from the 4 choices. I'm going to write on essay number 2, and I'm going to write prompt number 4 or whatever, and the prompts will be detailed and what's expected of you. And so maybe you'll pick, an author that you're thinking later you might write your paper on. I want to give you that flexibility to focus in on the stuff that interests you. So that'll be the midterm. 2 short essays, 1 to 2 pages each, so 2 to 4 pages total for the midterm, uploaded to Canvas PDF form. Then there will be presentations. So typically in an in-person class, I'll do this in like a little conference. So a student will get up 5 minutes, very informal, just say, here's my idea for my paper, right? Here's what I'm thinking of writing on. And they'll take questions and we'll help them develop it and point them in the direction of where to go next. So in an online course, I want to simulate that as much as possible. So I do it with video presentations. So your face doesn't have to be in it. If you don't like your face in it, it can just be you talking on camera like I am now, explaining your idea. If you prefer to have, a PowerPoint or something else, a Word document up that you talk over, that's fine too. But, a 5-minute right, little pitch that says, here's the general topic I want to write on. Here's what my thesis is, right? I think that French is wrong about his analysis of corporate responsibility, right? And then a little summary of what you're thinking your argument will be. It doesn't have to be super polished. It doesn't have to be great yet, but I need to see an attempt at original thought in this presentation. If you do that, you get all the points, right? The only way you don't get the points is if you don't do it, or if you don't have an idea, or I don't see an attempt at coming up with an idea. Right? I will also give you, after the midterm is done, I'll post some sample essay prompts of like, here's the kind of thing you could write your term paper on. And if you're having trouble coming up with your own idea, they're pretty open-ended, but they kind of push you in the direction of original thought. So you can start with one of those topics if you like. But again, something has to come out of your brain that's new to the class. And when I say original, I don't mean no one's ever thought of it. I don't mean you have to do an exhaustive literature search. I mean, original relative to this class, to the things we've been talking about in the lectures and the readings. So once you finish your presentation, you're going to comment on each other's presentations. That's part of the grade. I will give you comments back as well. So now you have a lot of ideas, parts that are possibly weak, parts that need to be developed, potential objections that you'll need to think about how to respond to. Now you're ready to write a draft, right? You actually have an idea. And again, with the essay draft, as long as you do it and it's a full draft, so it shouldn't be an outline or half a paper. I'm thinking 5 to 7 pages. There's no super hard and fast length requirements, right? But typically it takes about 5 to 7 pages to adequately argue for a pretty narrow point. I don't expect anyone to be coming up with a new theory of business ethics. It'll probably more like you're engaging with one of the claims in one of the texts that we're reading. So you'll write up the draft, introduction, give us a thesis statement, a little background on the topic so that, again, assume the reader doesn't know anything about this stuff. So you have to introduce sort of the background of your point, then make your point, conclusion. So a full draft. But if you do that and I see an attempt, at making an original argument, you'll get all the points, right? You only lose points if it's like not turned in, or it's only half an essay, or it's an outline, or it's just a summary, it's basically like the midterm where you're just summarizing instead of saying anything original, right? So honest attempt at originality, again, you get all the points. Now, the final version of the essay that'll be due towards the end of the class, that I will grade on quality, right? And, better papers will get better grades. And there'll be a final exam. The final exam, exact same format as the midterm, just, second half of the class. And that's all of the assessments, right? The discussions, the short quizzes, the midterm and the final, and then this paper that goes in 3 stages. So again, a lot of it is free points if I see honest engagement, right? And that can be difficult in an online class, right? I do see people drift. I see people trying to sort of not doing any work for a month and then trying to catch up. And that's not going to serve you. And so I have to put up guardrails to make sure that you help yourself succeed. Okay, so diversity and inclusion. I mean, yeah, I want everyone to feel welcome and feel like they're valued and feel like their contribution is valued, regardless of racial or gender or other identity factors. So by all means, if there's anything I can do to help you feel more comfortable in the course, happy to do that. It's an ethics course, so it's possible that we might cover stuff that is cover content that is controversial or even sort of triggering to people. Just keep me in the loop, let me know. I'm very flexible with helping people feel comfortable in the class. In the discussion, you'll be interacting with each other. I've never run into any issues with people being disrespectful. I find that your generation is, much more aware of these issues than mine. So I've never had problems in the past, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't feel free to reach out to me if anything comes up. And I want everyone to feel included. Academic integrity. So, particularly in an online course, there is always the danger that people are going to try to just sort of plug a prompt into ChatGPT and it'll spit out a paper or a discussion comment or something like that. I've had it happen. It doesn't go well for those students because what the internet gives you back is grammatically perfect, devoid of original thought. And pretty much every uh, assessment in this course involves you saying something original, right? So ChatGPT isn't going to give that to you, and it'll be fairly obvious to me. And I won't have to prove that you used AI because you won't be your paper won't satisfy the requirements, right? It won't be saying something original, or it'll be unrelated to the course, right? So we've got various authors, right? Each of these authors has written a number of papers on a wide variety of things. So if people type into ChatGPT, what was Velasquez's approach to business ethics? It'll spit something out, and it'll be unrelated to the specific thing that we were covering in this class. So avoid it. Don't do it, right? Um, if I, again, if you do it, and I can tell you did it, and it doesn't satisfy the requirements, you will get a low grade. If you keep doing it, you know, that academic integrity process is pretty ugly. You can fail the course, you can get kicked out of school. So it's not worth it. Um, just do your own work. And I promise you will do well. I've never had anyone fail the course who actually did all the work, right? Um, People who fail the course are people who just don't turn stuff in, or they turn in garbage that was generated from the internet. Academic accommodations. So yes, if you have a disability and you need accommodations, happy to provide those. There is a process. You have to go to the relevant office, and their information, their contact information is here and also on the syllabus, um, because they have to clear you. Then they send me an email saying this student has these accommodations. I also, in my online courses, I try to arrange them so that some of that stuff isn't necessary, like the quizzes aren't timed, right? So, one of the most common accommodations people get is extended time on exams. You'll have all the time you need on the exams, so no worry for that. But if anything comes up, just make sure you go through that process. Try to start it early because, so that I can help you when it's time to do so.